guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a first impressions that I'm really excited to bring you. As you can see, you're looking at an American Blade Works V6. This is Model 1 version 6, and I have to say this has been a long time coming, and I've been interested in this for quite a while. Just so happened I was chatting with Levon from the Knife Nuts podcast, which I thoroughly enjoy, by the way. And he started, we were talking about this knife, and he said, look, you really need to touch base with Michael. I'm sure he'll want to send you one. And so I talked with Michael a bit and ended up getting this. And so I'm really excited to finally have an American Blade Works knife. As I say, I've been following them since, probably version 2 or 3 is sort of when I caught on. Version 4 was, now I don't want to get into a whole bunch of stuff here, but I did want to answer in my first impressions the question, why V6, right? It seems like every so often we have, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, and there's a number of, we have that with Hinders, we have it with Ariuses, we have it with Koenigs, I should say, and we have it with this. So with all of that in mind, I wanted to give a quick rundown in this by way of introduction to how things started with aluminum, with aluminum handle scales, 154 cm blade steel, a store-bought pocket clip, and over time this has progressed to where it is. The big changes, a lot of the big changes came in version 4 of this, which Michael calls a complete new redesign. They went to the titanium pocket clip, they went to G10 or micarta scales, which you can still get. The lock bar, well, really you can see it's fully nested liners, including the lock bar. The blade steel back then was S35VN. Now, of course, it's 20CV. All right. And the bearings back in the initial times, the bearings were stainless steel, and they've since switched to ceramic. So a lot of those changes came in the version 4 of this. After that, a few other things were changed. The pocket clip screws went from internal to external. You can see that here. You can also see the screws and the location for flipping that clip to left side carry if you're so inclined. Finally, this latest version, most everything was the same as the previous version 5, except a couple of things. So first of all, some jimping added to the spine, a couple new screws with 2 screws in the pocket clip, and also the liners were redesigned to have better geometry and to be done in stainless steel rather than titanium. They were titanium liners for a while. But I think if you've been around knives for a while, you know that there's a preference there for steel because there's, you've got steel now interfacing with steel instead of a softer metal and a harder metal, which is what we like to see. All right, so today, I know that could have been a little confusing. I skipped over a couple things, so let me give you the full rundown of this knife as it sits in front of you. We have a 20CV drop point stonewash blade, flipper with ceramic bearings, D-shaped pivot, stainless steel nested liners, milled titanium clip, left or right side carry, micarta scales, and there are a bunch of different options available in those micarta scales, titanium backspacer, and so we have, this is the sort of the finished package as it stands in version 6. Now, I don't know what lies in store for version 7, version 8, whatever the case may be. In fact, I may ask Michael about that before I do a full review. And I may even ask him about some other things. I will say this, one big difference is I know there are some full titanium options available here. So this is micarta. I know there's G10, there's different designs, but there's also a full tie version of this knife as well. All right. So that's kind of a rundown of all the parts and features and functions. Let me give you the size and weight on this. It's just a hair under 8 inches, so 7 7/8 overall, 3 1/4 inches on the blade. All right, 4 5/8 closed. All right, so that's not too bad. 3 3/4 inches of grip area, which for me is, more than sufficient, plus that choil, which is very nice. I always like to have that option to choke up, and it weighs in at 3.9 ounces, which is very good. Now, what I will say about this in terms of size, weight, construction, carry, this strikes me as a great EDC knife that's just where the features and functions are just a little bit tweaked toward hard use. So imagine I guess in some ways this reminds me of a Para 3 in that sense, where, a Para 3, definitely wouldn't call this a hard use knife, and certainly the blade grind is going to be more sensitive than this blade grind, but it's, the PM2 kind of walks that fine line where you can do some harder stuff with it and get away with it, and I think this puts me kind of in mind of that. Um, so we've got thicker liners there, no internal milling. So it's just everything's a little heftier. The blade is um, a fairly heavy grind. It's still fairly thin behind the edge, but this is a confidence inspiring folder that is going to be great for your average EDC type of task, but I think has the chops to flex into a little more of a hard use role. The other thing that I have to say stands out to me about this, really stands out, is that we've got this really nicely done USA made small batch production knife that isn't $500. The action on this is astounding. The fit and finish is really nice. The feel in hand, this is a knife that deserves its popularity. It's a knife that has, it's not easy to get your hands on, and oftentimes that whole supply and demand equation really wrecks it for the end user, because the price just keeps going up and up and up, right? The makers just keep pushing that price point up in an effort to slow down supply and demand, but these have stayed at a pretty reasonable price point, and I have to say that's pretty welcome from my perspective, and it gives us regular folks a chance to own something that is has great attention to detail, is small batch, has a lot of pride of ownership, and so that's my initial impression. We've got this really nice EDC that leans toward heavy use, made in the US in small batches, that has a lot of pride of ownership and is fairly accessible. So there you go. I will of course carry this and use it and get to know it a little better and come back with a full review in the not too distant future. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks again to Michael at American Blade Works, and thanks again to Levon at the Knife Nuts podcast. Don't forget to check the description box down below for channel sponsors, and I would love to hear your comments on this knife as well. All right, thanks a lot for watching. We'll talk to you soon.